With the goal of creating a hub for West Africa, the Nigerian government has been committed to establishing a national carrier and expanding its aviation infrastructure, particularly as it has been almost 20 years since the last accepted national carrier went bankrupt due to debt, poor management, and corruption. Nigeria's infrastructure has suffered from years of underinvestment, and the country's aviation industry has been a prime example where it has endured a medley of large international carriers and small domestic operators. Outgoing President Buhari, however, has been eager to relaunch a national carrier that could be a boon for economic growth and help Nigeria become a significant operator in West Africa, a region where flights can be expensive and difficult to come by, in what has been perceived as a bid to cement his legacy. Since Nigeria Airways stopped operating in 2003, the Nigerian government has not owned a domestic airline. In 2004, not long after Nigeria Airways ceased operations, Air Nigeria was created as a sort of replacement. The Virgin Group of the United Kingdom and a group of Nigerian investors formed a joint venture that became Air Nigeria, which flew under the Virgin Nigeria name. Air Nigeria continued to fly in its own colors after the contract with Virgin expired, until it ceased operations in 2012. Since taking office in 2015, Buhari and Nigeria's Minister of Aviation, Hadi Sirika, have prioritized the relaunch of a national airline. As a result, they pushed for the launch of the Presidential Aviation Roadmap in order to encourage growth in Nigerian aviation. This plan included establishing a new national carrier as well as a new maintenance, repair, and overhaul facility, a national leasing business, and other projects. The new flagship Nigeria Air was unveiled at the Farnborough Air Show in 2018. However, plans for a launch were shelved just 2 months later by the government, and there were no explanations given. Sirika declared in November 2021 that Nigeria Air would take flight in April 2022, following Federal Executive Council approval. The date was later postponed, though, after the Omicron variant of COVID-19 appeared in the latter half of 2021. The aviation minister insisted that the envisioned national carrier would be driven by the private sector, with the federal government owning just a 5% stake, while speaking at the World Government Summit at Dubai Expo 2022. The minister was eager to declare that the remaining 95% of the new airline would be available for private ownership, with a core and unidentified investor at the time controlling 49% of the share.
Private, 100% private, 5% government, and no government stepping right.
Nigeria's Ministry of Aviation chose a consortium led by Ethiopian Airlines as the preferred bidder for Nigeria Air, the country's new flag carrier, following the announcement of a new bidding process in March. The transaction was carried out through a public-private partnership model. According to the agreement, Ethiopian Airlines will own 49% of the new airline, the Nigerian Sovereign Fund will own 46%, and the Nigerian federal government will own the remaining 5%. Hadi Sirika said the agreement aimed to acquire 6 Boeing 737 planes initially, with the expectation that the airline would be able to procure up to 30 planes between the third and fourth years. Nevertheless, he insisted that Nigeria Air is a limited liability company and that the government has no involvement in it. The Nigerian government hopes to launch the carrier by the end of 2022 after completing all procedures by mid-November of the same year, including contract negotiations, due diligence, and the issuance of a compliance certificate. The Federal Executive Council of Nigeria, a body of decision-makers chaired by Buhari and members of his cabinet, must approve the agreement and final contract terms before it can be finalized, in a process that could take up to 8 weeks to complete. Nigeria Air will begin service between the nation's capital Abuja and Lagos and later expand to other routes. Since the collapse of Nigeria Airways in 2004, various governments have attempted to resurrect a national airline, but several iterations of a rebooted carrier have failed to take off. So it comes as no surprise that the announcement of the Ethiopian Airlines as a primary investor in Nigeria Air is causing concern in the aviation sector. Experts and stakeholders in the sector claim that the process has generated more questions than it has answered, and that the deal is shrouded in secrecy. According to sources, Ethiopian Airlines was chosen as the preferred bidder because other foreign investors showed apathy, considering the minister's promise to complete the project before the end of the administration. Tuwolde Gebremariam, the former group chief executive officer of Ethiopian Airlines, hinted in August 2018 that the country of Nigeria had discussed hiring Ethiopian Airlines to run its national airline. At the time, the minister refuted the assertion and stated that talks with potential partners and investors, including development finance organizations, airlines, and original equipment manufacturers, were still ongoing. With Ethiopian Airlines being chosen, the Nigerian aviation minister revealed that within the next 2 years, Nigeria Air will be launched to its full size of 30 aircraft in international operation, thanks to the overall share capital of about $300 million provided by the selected bidder. However, according to the Daily Trust, Ethiopian Airlines, which is wholly owned by the Ethiopian government, controls a majority of the Pan-African passenger and cargo network. It flies the newest and most advanced fleet to more than 130 international passenger and cargo destinations on 5 continents. Additionally, the airline owns 49% of Air Malawi, 100% of Ethiopia-Mozambique Airlines, 45% of Zambia Airways, and 49% of both Guinea and Chad Airlines. As a result, should the agreement be approved, the airline would now own 49% of Nigeria Air, making Nigeria the 6th airline managed by Ethiopian Airlines. Based on these findings, Daily Trust's research showed that while Ethiopian Airlines is anticipated to provide technical support through personnel and equipment, funding from the company is highly improbable. In an interview, former president of the National Association of Aircraft Pilots and Employees, engineer Isaac Balami, stated that the planned national carrier would have been more advantageous if Nigeria had owned over 80% of the airline. Professor Anthony Kila, an aviation analyst, also questioned whether Ethiopian Airlines is a technical partner or investor. Adedayo Ademiwagen of Songhai Advisory, for instance, cautioned that a deal this close to a transition of power could be risky because presidential elections are scheduled for February. Ademiwagen noted the failure of the partnership between Nigeria and Richard Branson's Virgin Group after a new government took office in 2007. Other school of thoughts have reasoned that the Nigeria Air will be competing in a market where other regional airlines on the continent have recently had difficulty turning a profit. For instance, government bailouts were provided to South African Airways for many years before it filed for bankruptcy in 2020, whereas Air Tanzania, Kenya Airways, and Uganda Airlines have also been part of the East African Airlines that are losing money. On the other hand, there has been strong support for the agreement between the Ethiopian Airlines and the aviation industry in Nigeria for the Nigeria Air. Dr. Benga Olowo, president of the Aviation Roundtable and Safety Initiative, has asserted that choosing Ethiopian Airlines as the core investor for Nigeria's national carrier, Nigeria Air, was the right decision and has backed Ethiopian Airlines as a good partner. Olowo, who had previously opposed the establishment of the national carrier, stated that the government is determined to establish it, and that his support is based on the need for the success of any new startup airline in Nigeria. He did, however, note that failures continue to abound in the market, and some airlines remain very weak, so the challenge for discerning and concerned citizens remains in providing useful advice. According to Dr. Olowo, the agreement is especially beneficial for Air Nigeria to partner with Ethiopian Airlines as a competitor on the Nigeria Bilateral Air Services Agreement for simple purposes of code-share agreement and block seats agreements outside the airline's intended direct services. The ex-staff of Nigeria Airways reaffirmed that the nation's defunct national airline had previously operated to many nations, albeit not directly, but through commercial agreements. He also stated that this partnership makes it easier for interlining and global alliances, both of which are essential in today's aviation, to form rather than the airline having to struggle on its own to find partners for route expansion and penetration. He listed the strong maintenance facility Ethiopian Airlines has, its diverse fleet, which will be very helpful to the young Nigerian airline, as well as manpower training and personnel exchanges as advantages of the new agreement.
We keep national assets by force. An asset that is ruining.
Over the past 10 years, Ethiopian Airlines has experienced the fastest growth in Africa, and due in large part to a solid plan laid out in 2010, it has succeeded where many other airlines have failed, so much so that it received the Decade of Airline Excellence Award's Best African Airline Prize in December 2020. But the airline's ascent to the top spot in Africa really got underway in 2005. In terms of passenger volume, the airline lagged South African Airways, Egypt Air, and Kenya Airways at the time. However, it started a strategy to increase its traveler volume to 3 million by 2010. Ethiopia Airlines has considered expanding connectivity in other parts of the region, in addition to increasing traffic at its hub in Addis Ababa. One of the best ways to do this given the political and financial constraints is by making investments in other airlines. It acquired a 49% stake in Malawi Airlines in 2013. Additionally, it began collaborating with the Zambian government in 2018 to revive Zambia Airways, in which it acquired a 45% stake. It also owns ASKI Airlines and Ethiopian Mozambique Airlines. In an interview with Reuters in 2018, Tuwolde explained how it would be difficult to compete with just its hub in Addis Ababa, and that there were discussions with Chad, Djibouti, Equatorial Guinea, and Guinea about possible joint venture carriers. According to the top 100 carriers ranking in the Skytrax World Airline Awards, which rates the world's best carriers, Ethiopian Airlines rose 11 places to position 26 and emerged as Africa's best carrier, with South African Airways and Air Maroc coming in at position 66 and 79 respectively to stay within the top 100 carriers globally. That sums up our video for the day. If you enjoyed this video, watch also the next video on your screen, which looks at the 5 African countries which possess 50% of all Africa's wealth. Be sure to give the video a like, leave a comment, and subscribe to the channel for more interesting future videos.